You go for therapy when you're ready to be successful, when you're ready to put your effort into it. So just because a person stutters, it doesn't mean that we jump into therapy. You go for therapy, and it can be successful. Every person who does better, I tell them, you don't understand how it's almost miraculous. It is miraculous how fast and how simple a person can turn around. And sometimes most people have gone for therapy in the past before they come, but some of the newer people, they feel like, okay, I guess this is just regular stuttering therapy. Like, of course, they get better, right? I tell them, no. This is unbelievable. What just happened?
Beruchim Habayim and welcome to Torah Talks Chazaq's Tuesday night program with special guests. Tonight we have with us all the way from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rabbi Yanky Kaufman. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom.
Baruch haba. How are you doing?
Shalom. Good.
Great to see you. Thanks
here.
for joining us. Great seeing you again. And we're going to be speaking about channeling your challenges to help others. And before we get to that exciting topic, to help others is always exciting. A little bit of background about yourself and the great work you're involved with.
So thank you for inviting me again.
Of course.
And I got into this field because I had a major stutter myself. So to speak, it's not something I chose, at least as far as I know.
So you had a challenge.
And a major challenge of stuttering. Starting from as far back as I can remember.
Wow.
From when I started speaking. And stuttering, people look at it as just speech, but it's really much more profound than just speech. Because in a Yid's life, speech is so front and center. And therefore, when someone is challenged with their ability to be able to speak properly, it affects so many aspects in a person's life. So we have the speech part, the disfluency. Then we have how it affects the person. So academically, a lot of people don't ask questions.
Right. That's right.
They don't ask questions. They don't understand.
One that's Baishan, one that's embarrassed is not going to be able to learn because you won't be asking questions. Yeah.
Socially, having friends, being a part of it. It's one of those things that just sometimes it's a little gray area, but because we have a study, we will just rather avoid and be more comfortable avoiding it than being more involved. Affects a person choosing a job. A lot of people who study will choose a job that's easier for them on their speech than something that's more lucrative if they have to be out there more. Really in so many ways. And one of the big challenges about it also, it's a very lonely challenge because people don't really understand it well. It's very complex and it affects a person much more, like we said, than just speech. So when I was younger, I went for a lot of speech therapy. I don't remember too much of what I did, playing some games and things like that, but, got a snack bag and a drink box, and I was happy to go middle of school to the therapy. That went on for around 3 years, and saw no results.
Wow.
So my parents said, okay, let's take a little break. And then, I grew up in Muncie, by the way, and then we had home therapy. Speech therapists came to our house, and then again, no improvement. So we took a little break, and we waited till I was a little bit older, at my bar mitzvah. That's the only thing I remember at my bar mitzvah is trying to speak, or lack thereof, not being able to speak. That's pretty much what I remember from my bar mitzvah, and that was a very big challenge. The apprehensiveness of getting up there in front of everyone. And
but in general, there's a fear of public speaking.
Yes.
It's like the famous thing that the individual rather be in the coffin as opposed to giving the eulogy for the person that passed away because of the fear that they have of speaking in public.
Right. So just to bring it out, I think we're speaking in public over here.
Yes.
And I have a little bit of fear, very, very little. It's not to compare whatsoever to stuttering, because if I had a stutter, I wouldn't do this at all.
Wow.
And so my bar mitzvah was apprehensiveness from before, during, and after. And so it was very hard. And then, there's all different levels of stuttering, but I had a major stutter. And so I went to another specialist, and then one after the next. So just to fast forward so it was around 15 years of therapy.
Wow.
All different types of therapy. And in America, in Eretz Yisrael, I really went to anyone who I heard of because I was very desperate. I'm a very motivated guy, and I like to do whatever I can to help myself. And this was something very important to me. The problem was that all the methods out there, there's a common denominator, and that is they work in the office, but the problem is they don't work in real life for most people because they're not practical. For example, let's say now that I don't stutter, it's very easy for me to use these methods even without any practice. Right? I didn't practice this before I came, and here we go. Let's try this one. Speak slow. That's a very popular method. So I have no problem speaking slow now. Or another very powerful method is taking a deep breath and talking the breath out. So I have no problem now doing that. Third very popular method is speaking very softly in the beginning. My name is Yanky Kaufman, and I'm doing 3 methods right now. I'll do more. Just say 3 words and then just wait. Just stop. So right now, I can do these methods. I don't really care how I sound if I talk like this because I don't really stutter anymore. I don't stutter anymore. So I don't have the stuttering on my mind. But when a person stutters, and that's taking up so much space in their mind, besides for the actual stuttering and the old behaviors that they have because they stutter, plus the association of stuttering, plus the fears of stuttering. So even if you don't have a fear, doesn't mean you won't stutter. You still have the associations and the habits of stuttering and the habits of the way you speak because you stutter. All that comes into play. And plus having another thing on your mind, so in the office it can work very well. But in real life, for the most part, they all fall apart. And that was part of the challenge of stuttering, going for therapy and not working. Then I tried things on my own after I saw that therapy was not working for me. So one of the things I realized when I spoke very slowly, it worked amazing. But again, I tried to do that for 6 years in real life. Just speak slow. When you try something for 6 years every day and it's not working, then, like I said before, it's just not practical. So it's a great method, but it's not practical. I got married, Baruch Hashem, and my wife happens to be, she doesn't care at all about stuttering at all. She's very past it. And I went in Koil in the Mir in Eretz Yisrael, and I was raising a family. I was actually giving shir in the Mir on Navi. I wanted to learn Navi. Nobody else was teaching it, so I decided, okay, I'll do it. To make a long story short, for the first few months, I stopped stuttering shortly after, but the first few months, I was stuttering when giving the shir in the Mir on Navi. In learning, I was a little more confident, so I didn't stutter as much, so people were able to follow it, but it was definitely with a stutter. But this learning is something I wanted to do, and I didn't let this stand in my way, even though some people may say, oh, so it probably didn't bother him because he's giving shir. It did bother me a lot, but I gave shir anyway. One day I get a phone call. This is when everything turned around. Somebody knew someone who was struggling tremendously with a stutter in Eretz Yisrael. He was Israeli. He spoke a little bit English. I spoke a little bit Hebrew. And otherwise, we really had nothing in common, pretty much. I mean, we're both Yidden, but he had a major stutter. He went for a lot of therapy, and he was burnt out with the system. And somebody knew him, somebody knew me, invited me to come speak with him to be mechazak him, to give him some, what do we call it over here? Chazaq.
Chazaq, there you go.
He needed a lot of chazaq. He
his stuttering was
chazaq,
yeah.
And he needed a lot of hizuk. So he left yeshiva because he couldn't find chavrusas, and he couldn't ask questions, like we said. Just didn't really fit in. And his parents were really afraid of him. He was all alone, and this lonely challenge, nobody really to speak to about it. So somebody knew him, somebody knew me, said, why don't you speak with him? I was like, me? I could teach him how to stutter. I can't teach him how to not stutter. So the person said, well, maybe just try to give him some chizuk. I said, oh, chizuk? Sure. I'm very good at chizuk. I'm very good at getting chizuk because I was still struggling myself. Giving chizuk, and I was still stuttering at the time, was not really my thing. So he said, you know what, maybe just be his friend. I said, okay. It could be that I could do. I could be any Yid's friend.
100%.
So we met, and I didn't know what I was going to say to him because I was still struggling myself. So I tried. I took out a piece of paper. I took it very seriously. I davened to Hashem should be able to help him. I remember now vividly sitting at the little desk and taking a pen and paper, like, okay, Hashem, please put the words, what should I tell him? I started to write things down. And Hashem popped something in my head. Why don't you experiment this for the next day? It wouldn't hurt. Make a long story short, while I was trying to help him, within a very short time, within a matter of days, I realized that this method, what I said before, was missing in the field, was that it was missing something that's practical. Hashem put into my mind something that is practical and that worked for me immediately, within a few days. It took me some time to really chap that it was really working, to understand that this is really working, because I'll give you an example of what this is like. Sure. Imagine somebody who, wakes up one day and he has wings. So, of course, he goes in his car and, has to drive to wherever he's going. Doesn't realize, you don't have to drive in the car. You have wings. It's just so easy. So when is he going to really understand that he has wings? When he's pushed off the bridge. He's like, whoa, I have wings. So that the clincher that settled it in my mind that you don't have to study anymore was when I was invited to a shul. My friend brought me in, and make a long story short, the Rabbi is very friendly. This is in Ramat Eshkol, and it's in Eretz Yisrael. And the Rabbi is very friendly. In the middle of his speech at the Kiddush, after davening, he sees a new person. He says, "Hey, I see we have a new person. What's your name?" I didn't know he was going to ask me that. If I would have walked in, because for people who stutter, usually their name and exact things are the hardest things for them to say. So he says, "What's your name?" And I'm like, what should I do now? I'm stuck. How can you do that? Maybe I stutter. You should give me the 3-second warning. I would have been out of here. If in case you stutter, you better run it out. But Hashem has his ways, and this was the perfect time for it to happen. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what should I do now? Wait, I have a method. I said, Yanky Kaufman. He's like, oh, very nice. Where are you from? I'm like, whoa, I don't know if this is going to work every time. So I said, Sanhedrin Mochevet. He said, no, where are you originally from? I was like, whoa. Is this part of your drasha to see you? Well, the new guy who used to stutter. Anyways, I told him, Monsey, New York. And then he continued on his drasha. And that's when I realized, whoa, wait a second. We have something that really works. And I wanted to share with other people. That Motzei Shabbos, I took out a phone book. And I called up all the famous people that I heard of in Eretz Yisrael who speak English. And I told them I have a new way. If you know of anyone who stutters, maybe I could help them. And slowly but surely, people took me seriously. People sent me people, and the success was growing. And I realized a lot of people I was seeing had the same journey as me, going for a lot of therapy, working in the office, but not in real life. And I explained to them how they can speak better within a short time, not as short as me. I structured the program over time that it should be able to cater to as many people as possible. But make a long story short, from that time on, I've been busy with stuttering all day, all night. And 9 years so far, Baruch Hashem, and we do one thing, just stuttering.
Wow. So amazing. Unbelievable. So you had a challenge, and you're taking this challenge of stuttering and using the challenge that you had to go out and to help others. How does one take a challenge that he has, whatever it may be, to use it as a method to be there for others as well?
Yeah. So because I had the challenge for so long, I was very keen on what exactly the challenges are. And when I started to put together this method, I realized that the number one thing is that it needs to be practical. Not just another method, but it's got to be practical. It's got to work for real life. That was the most important thing. Number two, I realized that people can do well in a one-on-one, but they have to be guided of how to use this in real life. Unfortunately, a lot of people say, well, now you're on your own. I taught it to you, maybe scientifically at best. There's something to the method. And then they say, well, I did my part. You got to figure out the rest. But that's not fair for people who stutter because there's a lot of barriers in the way. So I came up with a system of how to guide people to use the method from the office into real life. We have a certain structure to it, but it's individualized as well to understand the person. It takes a lot of care and patience to understand where's the person, what are his challenges, what does his social scene look like, what are his capabilities. And finally, I realized that when they're learning a new habit, for this to become second nature, which is ultimately what people need to be successful long term, is they need follow-ups. And I think it's like this in any chronic challenge, that there's a turnaround, especially a fast turnaround. People need follow-ups. So who's the best person to do follow-ups? Someone who studied themselves. They So we have now a lot of people who used to stutter. We call them speech coaches. All these people are people who used to stutter themselves, went for therapy, so they really understand it, started into their adult life, and now are speaking amazing.
Wow.
And we have all different types of people. Older, younger, men, women, and we have people from different communities. We have someone here in Queens, but really many other locations really around the world. And these, I selected the best ones who can give it over to others as well. So we have a follow-up system for months that someone also who had the challenge. And, they get obviously a new friend. Because like I said before, stuttering is a very lonely challenge. People don't really understand it. I remember people used to tell me, Yanky, why can't you just say your name? You know your name, right? You should just say it. So people don't really get it. So this is taking everything that was hard for me, just this aspect of having a friend and somebody really who understands it. There are people who stuttered, but they have their own anecdotal experience. They woke up one day, inspirational. I realized that, everything's good. It's all good. We're all good. And then they just stop stuttering, or for the most part, stop stuttering. But this doesn't talk for most people, because most people don't necessarily have that inspiration. They don't even know how they got that inspiration themselves necessarily to give it over to other people. So here they're able to speak to someone who had the challenge and worked hard to overcome the challenge, and now they're helping them. And a lot of these people then become coaches themselves. It's a very good feeling for them that now they are able to take their challenge and give it over to and help other people along the way. That's the main part. And then we have extracurricular programs where I realized, so I'm always looking, how can we help more and more people? I could have told myself many years ago, helping a lot of people, and this is good enough. But when it comes to helping people, it's never good enough. It's how can I help more and more and better and faster.
100%.
And long term.
Never be satisfied and don't stay status quo. Take things to the next level. Do more, 100%. That's music to my ears, Rabbi.
So I realized that there's some people, we'll call it almost traumatized by their nevers, like speaking in public, or getting the aliyah, or introducing themselves to new people, or saying their name. So this is extracurricular for people who need that extra help. We have these exclusive groups where people come together from all over, mainly from the tri-state area. And I've done around 65 of these, where we have anywhere between 10 to 20 people come together. And we have our exclusive minyan. People pray together, and they're the leaders, and they speak in public, and they introduce themselves. And we have a brachas party, and they learn together. They're partners, and we take walks together.
The whole community.
And we had a lot of the big speakers come, whether it's rabbanim, whether psychologists, whether medical doctors, and a lot of the speakers who were on Chazaq came to us as well, and they introduced themselves, and a lot of times we have psychologists, and there's question and answers and unique questions that they can hear from a professional, and the people they sense of it's really professionally called a skills group where they improve together. It's not just a support group, but there's no support that can be greater than a skills group where people are not just talking about the challenge, but working together to overcome the challenge. Then I have people who were in the program, let's say 5-6 years and speaking fluently and holding it down. They come and say, you got to keep it up. You got to keep up your practice. It's doable. And therefore, everyone really gets a big, really, the idea was to take this challenge, all the intricacies that I've seen in myself, to help other people. One more thing that is very important, and that is that a lot of when Baruch Hashem, I got very busy myself helping people who stutter, and I had a 6-month waiting list. I was doing this for around 2 years, and there's such a 6-month waiting list.
Is there statistics or percentage or how many people out of how many people? Is there such a thing?
Yes, there is. It's very vague because what do you consider a real stutter? Some people stutter when they were younger. Some people have very slight stutter. They try to hide it, I've helped B'siyata Shmaya already over 1,000 people in the last 9 years. So it tells me there's a lot of people who stutter.
A lot of people, wow.
And recently there's a lot more of the slight stutterers that are coming because they see that if there's real help, why should they even have a slight stutter?
100%.
So, but Lamaisa got very busy, and I needed to train in more people. So the speech coaches helped out a lot, but I wanted to cater to people in different locations. And I wanted to cater to people who speak different languages: Hebrew, Yiddish, English, So I looked into the best therapists I could find to train in more, to help and cater to more people. So because I went for so much therapy, I know what it's like, what a good quality therapist should look like. And I strain no effort to find really the best people in the field. And some of the people working for me are doing this for 20 years. Therapists for 20 years. They're really, I didn't look for people who are in the lower end, people who are very, very successful. These are the people who, Baruch Hashem, I'm able to work with.
So, Rabbi, imagine for a moment that there's an individual watching and he himself or a family member, a friend, neighbor that stutters. What message can you give over to these, to this individual that stutters?
I'd say that there's basically two different types of people who stutter. One is the people who say it's okay to stutter for whatever reason.
Which there are.
Which there are. That wasn't me. I mean, I tried that also to tell myself it's okay, but
I think there's people that I know that.
Right. There are people like that. There's all different reasons why they're like that, but either way, for whatever reason, they're not looking for therapy. That's fine. But for the people who are looking for therapy, they should know that for the first time ever, right, there's a guy who used to stutter, had a heavy stutter, completely overcame his stuttering, and now his therapist working under him. And the reason is very simple, because we have a practical way, number one, and number two, we have a system that guides a person how to make this in their real life to be successful and how they could be long term. So I think that that's the most important message, that people should know that there is a practical way. It's not something, exotic, dramatic, sophisticated. It's simple, straightforward, very methodical, obviously.
Proven, yeah.
But, recently our latest update, let's say, one is that I started to teach in college, actually. It's a future speech therapist.
Wow.
And number two is, people always ask me, what's your success rate? It's a very hard question because, how much effort did they put into it? Where were they holding before? But it's a good question. So for the first time in the history of the world, we have a success rate, especially for teenagers and adults. For the first time, there's a success rate. Most people look at it in the field right now, there's no such thing as a success rate because it's always individualized. There is no better method. They're basically all the same. So how can you have a success rate? Well, for the first time, I worked with a very prestigious psychologist in Lakewood who I collaborated with to do research and for people to attest what they gained from the program. And Baruch Hashem, it's really the first time we have a proven success rate, helping tremendous amount of people in a very short time. So this is something that's professionally backed and it doesn't take long, but you definitely have to put your effort into it.
Wow. So Rabbi, you've been doing this for a while. And any interesting stories about stuttering that stick out?
So there's a lot of stories. I'll mention two of them.
Sure.
One is with the Ger Rabbi. I heard this from the Mashgiach in Ger in London. I was flown out over there to help people over there. Wow. So I was actually flown out 3 times. And I stayed in his house. So he told me a story about the Ger Rabbi, that the Ger opened up a community in Ashdod. They brought in a yeshiva bochum, and they would settle over there. When the Rebbe interviewed the people who would come, the bochum he would choose to relocate over there, he noticed that one of them had a stutter. And he told the person in charge, even though we feel very passionate that this is very important to bring people, open up new locations, but this group, we're going to have to put it on hold. This group is not going. And the Gabbai said, why is that? He said, because there's someone who stutters, and it's already uncomfortable for him to socialize, and to relocate him to a whole new place, it's going to be much harder for him. It's not worth the whole thing.
Wow.
That's one story. And the other one is one of my favorite Hashgacha Prata stories of how people have come to the program. It's a little humorous, that's why it's my favorite one. So a lot of times after PTA, parents are told, we think that your child should go for speech therapy for his fluency. Again, I mentioned it because this is very popular. You go for therapy when you're ready to be successful, when you're ready to put your effort into it. So just because a person stutters, it doesn't mean that we jump into therapy. You go for therapy when it can be successful. As an aside, just an important point. Now, so one person wanted to go for his therapy, but he's thinking, should he send his son for therapy? comes back home, he sits on the couch. Should he go for therapy? Should he send the son? What should he do? Where should he go to? And person gets a little bit bored after thinking about this conversation that he knows nothing about. So he slips his hand on the side of the couch in his dining room to the magazine rack, and he pulls out a magazine, and he opens up a Mishpacha magazine, and all of a sudden, this is the first feature, and there's from Jonathan Rosenblum, and it's about stuttering. So that's part one of the story. He's like, wow, I got to go to this guy. He wrote, Jonathan Rosenblum, like 5-6 years ago, wrote an article on me about stuttering. I said, so he called me up and told me that story. I said, you know what, that's even more interesting than you think. I said, that article was written 6 months ago. And out of all the magazines that he had in his rack, the magazine rack, he left this one there, I guess, and he pulled that one out from 6 months ago.
Wow. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Wow. So this
really, every person, the truth is, you ask me, every person who does better, I tell them, you don't understand how it's almost miraculous. It is miraculous how fast and how simple a person can turn around. Now, sometimes most people have gone for therapy in the past before they come, but some of the newer people, they feel like, okay, I guess this is just regular stuttering therapy. Of course, they get better, right? I tell them, no. This is unbelievable. What just happened?
You should know it's a very big chizuk, a very big inspiration to see an individual that had a challenge, that had a difficulty, and overcame it, Baruch Hashem, through siyata d'shmaya, whatever method it is, and now not only just moved on in life and did whatever he wanted, but he took that challenge and is going to help others as well. So that's a very big chizuk, very big inspiration. It's a lesson for every single one of us that if there is a challenge in any field, lav dafka stuttering, anything a person goes through in life, these challenges, difficulties are for you to be able to give help to others. And, it reminds me of Rabbi Wallerstein Zatzal, that he was invited one time to speak for a group that had a certain difficulty. And the first thing the individual asked the rabbi was that, did you have this difficulty? He's like, no. He's like, so what are you doing here? And the rabbi like, you're right. You're right. And he said that every time he had a difficulty, a hardship with regards to something, he would use those difficulties in order to inspire others. And that's something that we all have to take upon ourselves, to learn from Rabbi Yanky Kaufman and to see what difficulties, hardships we go through in life, and then hear about others that have those hardships and difficulties and go give them the chizuk. So, Rabbi, amazing, very inspiring, and we have a minhag, a custom, which is a final message for our broad audience.
So, we'll just broaden it to not just fluency, but really the value of speech and how it could be used. So, I think just quickly, one of the most important ways is we understand that Lashon Hara, we hear so much about it's terrible sin. And we know that Midah Tova Meruba, which means something that's used in the positive, is much greater than the flip side of it in the negative. So if Lashon Hara is so bad, is so destructive, what's Lashon Hara? Speaking bad about someone. Then we should focus a lot on Lashon Tov, speaking about the good about other people. 100%. And you can, if you have the guidelines for Lashon Hara, we know if you have a suffix, if you have a doubt whether you should say it or not, better not to say it. But by Lashon Tov, it's the opposite. If you have a doubt, should I give the person the compliment or not? You have a suffix about it, say it. And you can tell it to yourself also.
Powerful. Very, very, very powerful.
One last thing also about that's for using a positive, and in the negative, that I think that when it comes to talking, when it comes to davening, which is something I've always done when it came to stuttering, if there's one thing that the method that I used the longest, it was tefillah. And when a person comes to shul, that is really their time. Where else are they supposed to daven? You come to shul in order to daven. Right. That's what it is. Shul, davening. And when a person talks while davening, I think it bothers a lot of people who try to concentrate, especially for myself, when I see the value of speech, how much people are ready to do. People fly in, people will do anything to get their fluency and to really be appreciated, to be used only in a way that is productive, certainly not in a way that's destructive to disturb other people and disturb their tefillah. I think that's something that people should think about, that, especially if other people are trying to daven, that should be respect that. And like I said, the tefillah, that what helped me was my whole life, the most powerful method I used was always davening, always a new inspiration that maybe Hashem will bring it out now, and finally, when I stopped stuttering, it was from a tefillah that I asked Hashem, I don't know what to tell him. Please help me just be mechazek him. And from that came something much more grand, something that I never thought would have happened. And Baruch Hashem, I'd like to thank Hashem for having this new platform to spread the inspiration and let people know that you can take your challenges. And it was for a long time. And I never thought this would happen. Really, my dream, what I used to daven for, because I never got anywhere, was just 70% better, 80%. Never imagined I would help even one person. And I sometimes think about that. All the tefillos that I davened for myself, and because I knew the challenges I davened for other people, I many times reflect that maybe this person who I'm seeing now is somebody who, not that I met him physically before, but somebody who was in my mind when I used to daven for other people. Maybe this is the guy that I used to daven for.
Very, very, very powerful. Rabbi Yanky, Kaufman, taking your challenges and channeling them to help others. It's a very, very important message. Chazaq Yeshakach for those amazing words of wisdom and inspiration. And Bezat Hashem, we should take these messages to heart to help others, whether it's stuttering, whether it's whatever it may be. Take the challenges that you have and be there for others. We want to thank the Rabbi for coming in from Lakewood. Really appreciate it. And we want to remind everyone, Tuesday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Chazaq Torah Talks with special guest Bli and Ara Baruch Hashem. The feedback has been amazing. Chazdei Hashem. Everywhere we go, people tell me I heard this one and I got inspiration from this one and I forwarded this one to the person that needed it. It's great and we appreciate it. So please continue sending back feedback. It really, really gives a lot of chizuk. Like we spoke about the importance of chizuk and inspiring others. And we want to thank our friends at Torah Anytime and the many other platforms that have our Torah Talks podcast, Chazaq's podcast. A shout out to our friends at Daily Giving. $1 a day really goes a very far way. We encourage everyone to check that out as well. I want to thank Natan Behar behind the camera and the entire Chazaq staff, volunteers, team, board members, donors. Baruch Hashem, great things are happening. Chazir Hashem, Bli and Ara, lives are being changed and we're not satisfied. We want to do a lot more. Bezat Hashem, be part of the revolution. And Bezat Hashem, till next time, we'll see you. And B'Sarot Tovot, we should be zochet to see the Geulah Shlema, the complete redemption. It should come b'Merav b'Ini Spilin Yadei Zamin Amen. Shkach. Yanky Kaufman, you gave me chizuk. Beautiful.